Lost Ark, released to a global audience on February 11, 2022, following hot on the trail of its dying Amazon-owned cousin, New World, this Korean MMO was the next port of call for the MMO audience looking for something new, exciting, and different. Boasting a top-down real action combat implementation, familiar to Western audiences from games like League of Legends, great graphics, and years of content already developed, Lost Ark appeared to be a promising new entry in the Western MMO market. Yet less than 1.5 years later at the time of this video, Lost Ark sits at a measly 2.5% of its peak concurrent population. New and returning players to the game are nearly non-existent, and without any source of population growth to counter the slow bleed of player loss, it seems Lost Ark Global's story is coming to an end. While New World also suffered a similar fate even quicker, Lost Ark fell for different reasons. In this video, we will be exploring the differences in player expectations between the Korean and Western MMO audiences, and tell the story of how a game with such exciting combat was let down by the entire rest of the game. Inspired by the notorious collectible Makoko seeds from the game, I will be dropping some clues throughout this video so that you may be able to figure it out yourself. A small warning though, since most of the informative data about the games is a closely guarded secret, and much of the historical information has been lost, this video uses some derived and proxy measurements. Lost Ark was first launched in the Korean market on December 4, 2019, followed by regional releases in Russia and Japan the following year. This is a fairly common release model for Korean MMOs, going from domestic to regional and finally a global release. Dedicated fans who managed to create an account in these regions had long been murmuring of an MMO with fantastic action combat, a more forgiving upgrade system for a Korean MMO, no loot boxes, and no pay-to-win elements. With official confirmation of a global release, it was only a matter of time. Though New World commanded much of the West's attention for most of 2021, by the new year this had died down, and Lost Ark's grassroots buzz had now grown into a frenzy as its release approached. Many people's first exposure to Lost Ark at this time would have been the advertised founder packs, which were pre-purchases that included various bonuses, one of which was a 3-day head start. To illustrate the business model that Lost Ark took influence from, we need to delve into the early 2000s and examine the effect of MapleStory, a renowned Korean MMO published by Nexon in 2003. With its huge user base and revenue numbers, it created the mold that has shaped so many Korean MMOs to this day. During that time, the prevailing business model for MMOs involved pay-to-play systems, usually with a monthly subscription fee to support ongoing content updates. However, Nexon deviated from this approach in MapleStory by drawing on insights from one of its earlier games, Quiz, which demonstrated the potential of offering games for free and monetizing through in-game microtransactions. This shift opened up new avenues for player spending. Compared to the relatively linear income of the subscription model, companies and games could now be supported by individuals spending 10 or 100 times more than the median player. With its non-existent barrier of entry and attractive art style for a younger audience, MapleStory implemented this idea to tremendous success, forming the foundations of the business models of Korean MMOs. MapleStory also helped popularize a chance-based gear upgrade system with failure states, which has become an identifying feature of Korean MMOs today, seen in Black Desert Online, ArcAge, Terra, and now Lost Ark. While the exact implementation varies slightly between games, all these games feature a stepwise upgrade system where the player spends resources on a chance to upgrade their gear by a level. Higher levels typically have an increased resource cost for an attempt, alongside a decrease in success chance for those attempts. By using this system to control player gear progression, the developers now have a powerful tool to control player behavior. People like getting cool stuff, the best gear. We're inherently social creatures who pay attention to those around us. The integration of chance-based upgrades and failure states in the gear system serves as a powerful motivator for player engagement. Drawing upon the psychology of operant conditioning, this gear design leverages the principles of intermittent reinforcement and extinction behavior. Intermittent reinforcement refers to the occasional delivery of rewards or positive outcomes, while extinction behavior refers to the persistence of a behavior despite a lack of reinforcement. These concepts are crucial in understanding how chance-based reward systems exploit psychology to create player engagement. The intermittent nature of successful upgrades acts as a reinforcement mechanism. Players experience moments of triumph or relief when their upgrade attempts are successful, fueling a sense of accomplishment. These positive outcomes are sporadic, making them more emotionally impactful and reinforcing the desire to pursue further upgrades. The variability in success chance, contrasted with the allure of increasing gains at higher stages, create a sense of risk-taking and achievement.
Upgrade it again, right? Yeah, I just click it again. I don't even need to juice it, right? I mean, yeah, I don't even need to. Okay, here we go. All right, let's get it. Let's get it. Come on. Give it to me. It doesn't matter. It doesn't. Oh my god. Now I need to buy. Are you kidding me?
Viewed through this historical lens, Lost Ark's pedigree is very clear. It's a free-to-play game with a pretty generic story, It contains a cash shop that also sells a limited supply of upgrade materials, though you could also buy these with in-game gold too. And while it didn't contain loot boxes on launch, the resource-consuming gear upgrade system afforded designers more than enough psychological conditioning tools to control players. These factors put it in stark contrast to the biggest Western-style MMOs in the market today, World of Warcraft and Final Fantasy XIV. Despite the latter being Japanese, it is strongly modelled after WoW. Both feature the same payment system, a $15 a month subscription model with a paid $40 to $60 expansion every 2 years, as well as a cash shop containing cosmetics such as clothes, mounts, and logistical character servers, but no upgrade materials. Both games also use a similar style of gear progression, without the functionally limitless upgrade system seen in Korean MMOs. Bosses drop a fixed quantity of gear with known quality, with the hardest bosses dropping the best gear. While receiving this can come down to chance on an individual level, pre-made groups have full control over the recipient of this gear, able to give it to whomever they decide. Very importantly, both Western games feature gear resets, where the gear floor is brought very close to the current gear ceiling, obsoleting older gear and compressing relative player strength. Full gear resets occur upon a new expansion, and near full resets occur every 6 to 9 months between large content patches called tiers. These reset points serve as a clear and obvious entry point to the game for players looking to meet up with a large population of the player base. The possibility of gear resets is closely tied to the gear acquisition model. In Lost Ark, players have spent many hours painstakingly upgrading their gear setup, step by step, possibly involving real money. To quickly obsolete this periodically would drastically reduce the willingness of players to invest so much into their character. So now we've seen how the game is set up, but what about the players and their behaviour? While many of the issues players had with Lost Ark could be criticised as being self-inflicted, this is ignoring many of the reasons why players might behave that way. We have to explore metagaming, or how players play games. By outlining the factors causing this style of play, I hope to show you why Lost Ark and the general Western audience were incompatible from before the beginning. A small bonus here too, this also contributes to how players interact with single-player games to a lesser extent. So how is behaviour formed? I would summarise it as the product of all the tiny influences a person experiences, and one huge influence is media. Platforms like Twitch and YouTube provided gamers with a more engaging and interactive way to consume content compared to traditional text-based resources. Viewers could witness gameplay in action, learn from skilled players, and experience the game secondhand without actually playing it. This visual and immersive medium quickly gained popularity. Ad revenue became a significant motivator for creators, and anyone with an advanced knowledge of a topic in a game who can provide guides, advice, or answers for the soon-to-be huge population seeking it would be able to reap its rewards. Also growing quickly were social platforms like Discord and Reddit, which have not only facilitated a sense of community, but the rapid spread of ideas, strategies, and opinions as well. It's in this environment that individuals who might be naive on a topic have a high probability of encountering the echoes of ideas originating from influential content creators. The interplay between the content creators and the broader gaming audience in these social platforms can contribute to the spread of gaming-related knowledge. Now that there is a distribution pipeline between major figures and the broader audience, we can begin to fill it with Lost Ark content. Whether motivated by passion or ad revenue, as the global release of Lost Ark approached, a considerable amount of guide content had already been created. These resources assisted players in navigating the complex world of Lost Ark. Remember, this game came out with several years worth of development content already, and due to some of the design of the game pushing players towards these resources, guide content slowly spread throughout the community so that even the casually interested might catch whispers. Lost Ark's early access for pre-orders released on February 8, 2022, 3 days before the general release, to 530,000 concurrent players. Immediately, knowledgeable players and anyone they had influenced began to speedrun the game with the goal of advancing as far as possible, as fast as possible, knowing full well how lucrative the endgame resources would be. Through the information pipeline, news of this would slowly spread, but players had no reason to pay attention yet. On the general release, Lost Ark reached an incredible 1.32 million concurrent players. They were greeted with great graphics, a beautiful world, along with the much-hyped combat system. Reviews of the game were very positive, outside of the long queues required to enter the game, and the game still currently holds a Metacritic score of 81, similar to WoW expansions and slightly lower than FF14. But too often in critic reviews of MMOs, they do not play enough of the game to get a real idea of the long-term quality. Lost Ark's design contains a few bumps that might push players to seeking knowledge online. The first is the game's skill system, where players can equip 8 skills out of 20 to 25 that a class may have. While this seems like a terrific amount of player choice, the overwhelming number of combinations causes a large portion of players to quickly Google Lost Ark class skill build. This opens up players to the idea of seeking more information online. The second design is that much of Lost Ark's content, bosses, dungeons, raids, and regions, is locked behind a frequent and discrete gear level entry requirement. Unlike WoW or FF14's gear level checks that barely require you to engage in gear looting, Lost Ark requires you to pass some amount of random upgrades to advance. In trying to get to the next stage to access new content, players would inevitably hear about how others were rushing to gain access to the lucrative endgame resources, and also to follow the excellent guide, maxroll.gg, speedrun to tier 3. This seed is now planted. It's important to mention here that I'm not trying to judge the actions of anyone involved. The dedicated advanced fans and content creators were truly passionate for the game. Of course they wanted to play it lots and make guides. But once this knowledge is fed into the information distributing pipeline, it spreads. Whether motivated by the promise of greater rewards, or just wanting to catch up with their luckier friends who upgraded their gear faster, players began to search for information on activities that would achieve this, and they were not prepared for how much there was to do. WoW and FF14 have about 2 to 3 activities that you can do to get gear upgrades, and once you're done with those, you're done. You can take a break or do whatever you want. In Lost Ark, however, not only was there a massive list of rewarding quests to be done, some of it time-gated, resources could be transferred between the player's own characters as well as on the marketplace, hence their value. The amount of stuff you could do to progress your character was limited only by time and money. In other words, it could be limitless if you wanted. Much of the stuff to be done was also repeatable daily, and if you missed a day, you've lost a small portion of the resources you could have gained. Players made checklists which show how much could be done, and while most players didn't do all of it, they probably attempted to finish their dailies on one character at least. For a new player, or someone who's not very well connected, this could take up to 1 to 2 hours per day, and became known in the community as homework or chores. This kind of time commitment is not new to Korean players, who once voted down a proposal to reduce the amount of homework in their home region. Western players tried to engage with these systems. Critics could say, just play at your own pace, but coming back to social awareness, it's hard to not feel like you're missing out. This becomes very acute when friends are involved. Inevitably, some unlucky friend would be stuck below a threshold that all their luckier friends had passed recently, being unable to join them on any new content unlocked. And since combat rewards are available daily and weekly, letting a reset period pass by without doing the content means forfeiting that period's rewards, creating the pressure to leave someone behind. Though this is temporary, it definitely feels bad in the moment. What made resource acquisition even worse was the game's gold farming bot problem, which injected a large amount of gold into the economy by selling it for real money to real players. Unlike WoW and FF14, where little if any player power can be purchased with gold, and whatever can be purchased is fairly fleeting, gold directly influences player gear progression in Lost Ark. Now, the relatively fixed amount of gold income that players could generate legitimately had lower purchasing power, and this meant players would be working for less rewards. Many players felt pressured to pay money in order to avoid falling behind, colloquially called swiping, referring to credit cards. From my experience, I'd say many spent several hundred, but no small number spent several thousand. And these are normal people, not just content creators. Ultimately, the Korean-style design choices of a near-limitless chance-based gear upgrade system, the demanding chores, and the gear gating of content was incompatible with the Western expectations of time commitment and metagaming culture spread by content creators. This was made worse by gold farming bots inducing inflation and long login queues, and all resulted in the dissatisfaction of Western players with Lost Ark. Consequently, there was a severe decline in player population. It's impossible to know an accurate number due to the botting population, but the concurrent player count dropped by about 1 million before the game's first post-launch raid content, Argos. In the end, I'm quite sad the game died. The game was at its best doing challenging boss fights with friends, but those stellar moments were dwarfed by the inky blackness of the rest of the game.